This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to the program. Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Good to be with you, John.
Good to see you again, Roby.
I'm going to take us from national level to state level, and let's begin with the fact that in the last few days, former President Donald Trump wants to let Russia attack our NATO allies. President Biden has been described by a special counsel as an elderly man with a poor memory, and we've scuttled what was originally a bipartisan effort to reform the border and produce some foreign aid. Are we just at the end of days here, John? I don't feel really good about the political plight of the country right now.
No, in fact, that may not have been appropriate for me to sort of laugh at that question. It's actually a relevant question and a good question. You're careful not to overstate. It's careful in my case to remember that I'm an old man, and old men typically think the world is going to hell when they get old, because the world is not the way they remember that it was and ought to be. So let's keep that in mind. But I don't think I'm alone in thinking may not be at the end of days, literally, but we are at a precarious, if not crisis point, for our ability to govern ourselves and function. And for all the reasons you just mentioned, but also for the longer range reason that apparently our only logical, practical choices to lead us for the next 4 years are the two people in whom most Americans have lost trust and who present a choice that the Americans don't want. And the immigration crisis, if it is not going to be solved for a while, because our political system doesn't want to solve it, because there are political benefits to Trump and the Republicans by its remaining unsolved. That's severe dysfunction. And I don't know what to do about it. I thought, and not hopefully, I just thought, as a matter of fact, on Friday night, I thought the special counsel's probably gratuitous finding that Joe Biden is essentially demented. He's a pleasant, well-meaning old man that a jury wouldn't want to convict because he can't remember things. I thought that might create such democratic panic. I think it ought to. And a perception of a democratic crisis, that I actually thought within the next few days, the stories would break that Democratic groups were meeting and that old friends of Biden were going to him to try to come up with a new generation of leadership for the Democrats. Quite the contrary, folks seem to be rallying around him or thinking it's too late to really make any sort of change. Trump, meanwhile, wins everything in sight on the Republican side and is in charge of the Republican Party, to the point that, like a mild-mannered Republican senator from Arkansas, John Bozeman, opposed this border deal, I think, simply because he fears Donald Trump, or owes Donald Trump for Donald Trump's endorsement. So, long answer to your question. We're not at the end of days necessarily. We are at a probable crisis point for our ability to function and govern ourselves. That's all.
Let me get your take on this, because this has been confusing to me in terms of political messaging. Do we need legislation to fix our border crisis, or does the president have the tools to fix our border crisis already? Because that messaging is coming out of the same GOP PR machine. And I'm confused as to what, do we need a bipartisan? Do we need even a legislation, period? Or can we solve this without legislation? Because I just don't see how it could be both ways, but that seems to be what's being presented in arguments.
I'd compare it to the student loan forgiveness. I think Joe Biden decided, I can't get legislation passed. I'm going to do wholesale major student loan forgiveness. And what happened? lawsuits reined him in. There are regulatory actions that he could have taken along the way, I suspect, that would have made what we face less severe than it is. But and I don't know who would sue him. Probably somebody from the left if he went too far in terms of his administrative or regulatory attempts to take control of the border. That said, our senators have long thought that we need legislation. We came up with a good bill. James Lankford, a true red conservative guy from Oklahoma, a Baptist preacher, signed on to it, defends it staunchly, and it clarifies that. So this could have clarified the authority, and that's probably what scared Trump. I don't know the answer to your question about what actions Biden should have taken along the way or could still take unilaterally. I suspect it's all in a gray area like the student loan thing was. Ideally, it's best to have clear political coalescence around a statute. And that's the thing that seems to be out of reach.
Let's turn our attention to Arkansas, and we actually see perhaps a breakthrough or a change in political tenor and temperature at between the governor and the Board of Corrections. Late last week, Governor Sarah Sanders nominates the Chief of Staff, Lindsey Wallace, from the Board of Corrections to be the next Secretary of the Department of Corrections. This seems to be, at least on the surface, a consensus candidate. The board could probably be comfortable with this pick, and obviously the governor's okay with this pick. Do you sense a peace pipe maybe being sent around?
On this case, yes. It's not I wouldn't burden her by saying she had made a concession here. I think she's made a conciliatory move toward trying to fashion at least an element of consensus in this debate, and that's what she did. And she had the instinct to hire a probably non-controversial, well-experienced, well-positioned person to ascend to the secretary position. She had a meeting with the correction board chairman about it. She made phone calls to other correction board members to try to govern in partnership, and they all have responded favorably. It's the kind of thing I thought should have been done all along, and she did it here. And when she does it, I'm not going to second guess her motivation. I'm just simply going to say, way to go. In fact, I had a column about 7-8 days ago in which I said if she'd do that, and one other thing, I would happily write a correction for this column theme I've had over the months, that she's all about national talking points, cookie cutter national politics, her own national ambition, and not at all about being a well-functioning, focused governor of Arkansas. I said I'll happily write a correction if you and the correction board will pick a different secretary, and if you and the correction board, if you will go with them to the state personnel people to endorse, to support their request for money to pay their outside counsel, which they needed because Tim Griffin was representing you. She does that, then you know what? I'm going to have to write a correction. And I've got to be happy about it because I promised I would happily write a correction. I hope that happens. I wish I'd added also, drop the appeal of the Pulaski County Court hearing and agree that there is vested power that you need to recognize in the correction board through Amendment 33. But I didn't put that in as a stipulation, so I can't claim it now. But I think there's a possibility by the signal sent here that maybe she can, and the governor's office can agree to this payment for the outside lawyer the correction board hired, and we could begin to move toward maybe talking together about how do we free up more space? How do we get more guards? How do we help these county jails? How do we stop catching and releasing, to use her phrase, prisoners? So I haven't had much to say nice things about a governor since she's been governor. And I happily take this opportunity, and I look forward to writing that full correction. I don't think she's seeking my correction. I don't think she's responded to me.
I can assure you she's not seeking your correction, John.
Yeah. So. Yeah. But I'm a man of my word, and I look forward to trying to be happy about it and being happy and saying this is this is contradicts the theme I've drawn of her in her method of governing, and I'm happy about it. And I think the correction board people are too. They messed up by making Eddie Joe Williams the secretary. They overstepped. Everything's about overreach these days. They did so, and man, we've had such gloomy discussions over the last few weeks. This is a good one. So way to go, Sarah. Way to go.
All right. With the endorsement of John Brummett, she's a shoe-in for re-election this next.
She'll take it back tomorrow, I bet. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, John. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.